Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Garage. Gerald here with you, of course. Well, we are halfway through the year officially, as it has now crossed that threshold of July 1st. So seeing as this is the awards garage and I cover awards season basically all year long, definitely the further and further we get along in the calendar year, the more prominent that material becomes here on the channel. Well, last year I did something really cool on my website where I gave out my mid-season awards, and that was pretty popular. So I thought, well, this time around, since my YouTube is a lot more vibrant these days, why don't I do it in a video format? Now, a couple of housekeeping things. This is my personal opinion. However, I am factoring in critical consensus for the most part. In other words, if I loved a movie, but that movie ended up being like a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not going to put it here on my mid-season awards video. I hope that makes sense. I'll also tell you among these movies that I'm listing on my mid-season awards video, if I think any of those movies are going to be in my Oscar predictions or are currently in my Oscar predictions for movies that I think stand a chance when we get to the end of the year for receiving nominations. Spoiler alert, there's only one, maybe two movies that have come out so far this year, and I mean come out wide, release, not film festivals, that actually have Oscars potential. We just have not seen a lot of the movies that I think are going to be heavy awards players when we get to the end of the year. This one is going to be very, very simple, very cut and dry. It's going to be Best Movie. There will be 10 nominees in that category with an ultimate winner, which I think is the best of the year so far, that also has awards potential. Directing, so I will give you 6 nominees for Best Director so far this year with an ultimate winner. And then when it comes to acting, I'm going to break it up as 6 nominees in each of the categories for Best Female Performance and Best Male Performance. Now, both of those categories can consist of supporting roles and lead roles, and they both do actually. There's a nice mix of both in the male and in the female category. Let's get in to my mid-season awards and what I think are some of the award-friendly best films of 2025 so far. Let's start with performances, and ladies first. I'm going to start with our category Best Female Performance. I am giving 6 nominees. These are the top 6 leading or supporting ladies performances that we've gotten so far this year, in my opinion, but also fairly critically acclaimed across the board. The nominees are Sally Hawkins for Bring Her Back, Florence Pugh for Thunderbolts, Leah Myron for The Ugly Stepsister, Haley Steinfeld for Sinners, Sophie Thatcher for Companion, and Alicia Vikander for The Assessment. And looking at this group of ladies and in this group of films, these are all very critically acclaimed, and I loved all of these movies. These performances are a nice mix of supporting and lead. In this group, you have supporting performances from Haley Steinfeld in Sinners, also Alicia Vikander in The Assessment as a supporting performance, and the other 4 would be considered lead actress. Now, when it comes to the end of the year and we get to the Oscars especially, and when we get into award season, the only one, and this is very, very unfortunate because these are all stellar performances, the only one here that I think will be a Oscars player, or that could be an Oscars player, is Haley Steinfeld for Sinners. And unfortunately, I don't think she will crack that 5 to get into the nominated group, although she could, and there is a possibility, and that would be riding on the strength of Sinners overall as we get closer and closer to the end of the year, because of course that was an early year release, so it's got to hold that momentum, hell, as we're sitting here for another 6 months at least. Other ones of these that you could see pop up at various places during award season would be Florence Pugh for Thunderbolts, and I'm thinking predominantly for like the Golden Globes, maybe even Critics' Choice. Those types of bodies might want to award her for giving such a delicate, layered, really pivotal performance in an otherwise kind of forgotten about genre when it comes to awards films, with the exception of like the Black Panther movies, and I'm talking about the superhero genre. Some lesser known performances on this list that I want to point out to you real quick. First of all, Alicia Vikander in a little film called The Assessment. This movie is currently only available on demand. I think at last check it was like $5.99, so it's very, very well worth the money. It basically stars Elizabeth Olsen in the lead actress role, Himesh Patel in the lead actor role. They are a married couple, and then Alicia Vikander is in that supporting role, and she is the assessor. This is a futuristic sci-fi story. So this society is basically in a bubble while the rest of the world is falling apart, and it's like a perfect life, paradise, if you will. But in an effort to keep things tight and intact and not let it go awry, the government within that utopian society has decided to assign assessors that give an assessment to any couple that wants to start a family. So in order to have a child or to get pregnant, you have to pass the assessment. If you do it without doing so, it is considered breaking the law, and it becomes basically an apocalyptic situation at that point because they throw you out of utopia and you're doomed to your certain death on the outside world. So Alicia Vikander plays this assessor who shows up at Elizabeth Olsen and Patel's home to basically live there for 7 days to determine whether or not they can have a child. Now that might sound kind of normal, but still kind of weird, but Vikander, oh my God, like this is a performance that you have to see to believe. After introducing herself and kind of giving the ground rules, she basically acts as a child for the 7 days. And it's a hierarchy. So in the first day she's there, she's literally like a newborn daughter, like throwing food at the table, crying, pitching a temper tantrum, like just all kinds of stuff that your kids actually do between the ages of like a baby to 5 years old. Then she eventually becomes like a preteen, and there's even some like uncomfortable, awkward situations where she's like pretending to be like a teenager and kind of being seductive around the would-be father. So it creates a whole element of like taboo situation, and Vikander is just so indebted and committed to the role. It is easily one of the best performances I've seen this year across any film, any type of genre. And the other one I want to shout out is a film called The Ugly Stepsister, which you also find among this group, for Leah Myron, who plays the lead actress role of Elvira. So what The Ugly Stepsister is, and I'll keep this brief because I've already done a full review of it, I'll tag it here for you. This is essentially a body horror film taking place during the lore and the fairy tale of Cinderella. So instead of being told from the POV of Cinderella, of the princess, it's being told through one of the stepsisters, in this case Elvira. So all the stuff that we know from the Disney version of Cinderella is happening. You know, the ball, the slipper, all that shit is going on, and the prince is wooing her, whatever. But that's kind of going on in the background because we're focused on behind the scenes with these stepsisters and the evil stepmother. And Leah Myron plays that main stepsister who, her character is in a bit of a competition with Cinderella to win the affection of the prince. But the body horror aspects come into play in The Ugly Stepsister, which make it a cringy, hard to watch story of beauty and beauty acceptance among our society. Even though this takes place hundreds of years ago in terms of a setting, you still feel it in modern day. I mean, you can look at a movie like The Substance last year that was actually very successful at the Academy. Frankly, I think The Ugly Stepsister is a better movie than The Substance. And I love The Substance. I mean, I'm not saying that to like talk shit about The Substance. I love that movie. And I also have been told that these practices happened in this era. Women did this. This was basically an early form of what we know today as plastic surgery, where they would like literally cut off parts of their body to like reform them. And, you know, there's a scene where she wants to cut off her toes to fit in the slipper to prove to the prince that she's the actual one that lost it at the ball. It's a lot, guys. There's also a through line in the movie of Elvira eating a tapeworm purposefully to eat away at her inside so that she would lose weight. That's something that happened in this era, and I didn't know that. I thought it was embellished, but it's actually in the fairy tale, and it's actually based on true things that happened in that time in society, which is just crazy to me too, if you think about it in that terms, where it's like not necessarily even a fictionalized horror. It's like this is the kind of shit that these women were doing back then to be accepted, and the way that echoes through a couple hundred years later to our modern society is fucking wild to me. Women, you are beautiful. Just be who you are. I love you. The other ones on this list, most of you are probably familiar with. We already talked about Florence Pugh. Haley Steinfeld, that supporting role of Mary in Sinners. Very, very memorable in that movie. And like I said, I think she has a shot. I would probably give her like a 20 to 30% chance right now for supporting actress. It's just going to be a heavy, heavy group. It always is when it comes to the ladies. Sally Hawkins and Bring Her Back, another horror performance that was a pretty quiet, frightening performance that has a pretty interesting, the subtlest way I can put it, arc in that film, but she was great in that. Maybe her best performance since The Shape of Water. And the only other one we haven't talked about is Sophie Thatcher in Companion, which was an early release this year. Another horror movie, actually, kind of a thriller, but nonetheless is in that genre. And brilliant actress who also blew me away in Heretic last year in a much different role. But in Companion, you guys probably know, is a popular release. She plays like basically an AI fembot who is a companion to whoever wants to purchase her. And Jack Quaid does so, and she becomes his girlfriend. But she's a ever-learning AI that can be also controlled or master controlled from an app on his phone. And when her kind of programming goes awry and some people end up dead on this weekend getaway, it turns into a bit of a thing. Now, if you're worried about AI in 20 years killing us, this is a very scary concept. But it also has elements of like dark comedy in there, and it's a brilliant performance by Thatcher because she has to play an AI who has varying levels of intelligence because he can control it. He can turn her down to a novice, like bimbo basically, or she can be turned up to a genius where she literally knows everything that exists on the internet or whatever and becomes a human Wikipedia. So she plays those different layers and those different roles flawlessly. Going back to the nominees there, you see the 6 ladies. Again, my mid-season award for the best female performance of 2025 so far is going to go to Miss Leah Myron for The Ugly Stepsister. Myron is a Norwegian actress who probably none of you have ever heard of. I know I had not heard of her prior to The Ugly Stepsister, and I was so taken aback by her performance that I dove into different interviews that she did. She was on a couple podcasts in Norway talking about the movie, some red carpet stuff. She has a very like goth look, which doesn't mirror the way she looks in the film actually. So that kind of aids, and I know that this is a transformative performance for her. Have you seen The Ugly Stepsister? Am I overselling it? Let me know what you thought of that movie, and make sure you check out my full review if you're interested in researching that one further. Next up, let's look at Best Male Performance. Again, 6 nominees, and it could be lead, it could be supporting. The nominees, based on my opinion, I know you guys are already typing away down there like I missed something, I got it wrong. These are just my personal favorites that are also critically acclaimed among the masses. The 6 nominees are Miles Catton for Sinners, Chris Evans, Materialists, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, Tim Key for The Ballad of Wallace Island, Robert Pattinson for Mickey 17, and Tim Robinson for Friendship. So look, a lot of these are pretty mainstream. The ones I want to point out, though, would be Tim Key for The Ballad of Wallace Island and Tim Robinson for Friendship. Those are probably the 2 that are lesser known, at least I would say. Of these 6, Sinners is a big player. When you're looking at acting, Miles Catton, who got nominated here on this video, but you know, who am I? But also Delroy Lindo of Sinners. Those are both supporting players. Right now, I have both of them in my near misses. I don't have either of them in my top 5, but much like Haley Steinfeld in the previous category, they both could very easily end up in the top. Really, both of them could, but definitely one or the other could end up in that top 5. Miles Catton's performance is a little more pivotal to the overall story in Sinners, is a little more memorable, if you will. He has that whole music montage that's been lauded all over the place, all over social media and Twitter, and well-deserved it should be. It's a very unique and groundbreaking type of filmmaking that Ryan Coogler employed there. But even the POV, just kind of inherently by default from Sinners, is through Miles Catton's character of Sammy. So Michael B. Jordan and Miles Catton, I think, are players, as well as Delroy Lindo, who's not on my top 6 list here, but he's a possibility too. Aside from those, even though obviously I think these are all home run performances, I don't think Robert Pattinson can get in maybe Golden Globes for comedy. You know, Critics' Choice might throw him a bone because it is such a good performance and it was critically acclaimed, even though the movie was kind of, the reviews were all over the place. Same thing with Chris Evans for Materialist. That could also show up in the comedy category. Probably for supporting actor, I would say. I know the Astros midseason put him in lead actor, which I thought was kind of weird. I think Dakota Johnson is easily the lead in that movie, but in my opinion, Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal, neither one of them have enough screen time to be lead. And honestly, if they did, I think Pedro has a little more screen time in that movie than Chris Evans does. But nonetheless, he could show up in supporting actor for Golden Globes. So aside from the Sinners actors you see here, not a lot of award season chatter for these names. Now, Tim Key in The Battle of Wallace Island, I just talked about this when I wrapped up my June watches and I did my tier list. I'll tag that on this video for you, so I won't go super in depth, but it was just such a touching, charming, quiet, funny but like funny in a way where it's like you kind of have a crush on him because he's so cute, because he's just being normal and awkward and quirky. And I don't know if he's like that in real life, but he played it so brilliantly in this movie as Charlie. He basically owns this island off the coast of Ireland, and he invites his lifelong favorite band duo, which Carey Mulligan is one half of that duo, and he invites them to his island to do a private concert for an inordinate amount of money. And come to find out that his wife passed on, and that was her favorite band, so he's kind of doing it in her honor because she never got to see them perform before she died. And it's a whole beautiful thing. And at the end of the day, it kind of inadvertently, kind of without even seeing it coming, turns into this like self-reflection movie and dealing with loneliness and moving on and grief after you lose your spouse, and forming new friendships and new bonds that help you do that. It is a wonderful movie. Like, I was literally, and much like Sinners, and we're talking about that a lot on this video, music is at the core of Wallace Island too. It is a movie that is very much anchored by all the main characters' love of music. It's this particular band that keeps getting referenced in the movie, but it's like folk music, and then there's a little bit of pop music references in it. Wallace Island is streaming right now on Peacock. So if you have Peacock, you can watch it for free. If not, it's like $5 video on demand. If there was ever a definition for a feel-good movie, it is this. A lot of heart, a lot of weight. It is deep, but it tells it in a light manner that really gets through to the viewer. The other one I want to talk about is Friendship, because I got Tim Robinson nominated here. I didn't think I was even going to like it because I've seen mixed reviews on it. I didn't get to see it in the theater. I watched it on demand just about a week ago. And I was glued. I was transfixed to this movie. It's an A24 film that's very strange in its approach and in the way it kind of tells its narrative. But it's kind of a basic narrative, though, that I actually have lived through. So I was connected immediately because it's like these middle-aged dudes that, Paul Rudd plays Austin, who moves into Craig's neighborhood a couple doors down from him, and they end up basically, to make a long story short, sparking a friendship because they have similar interests. They're the same age. And I will just tell you, I'll be 50 this year. I don't have any male companion friends that I like hang out with on a regular basis. I definitely don't have any that live in my neighborhood that I can just walk down and play video games with, or band practice with, or jam out in the garage with. So I get where Craig was coming from. I have bits of that character in my own life where it's like you kind of want to have that companionship, but you're not really seeking it out necessarily. But then when it presents itself to you, it's like the greatest thing in the world. And the premise of the movie is that he's overzealous because Paul Rudd is the coolest guy in the neighborhood. I mean, it's Paul Rudd, and so he just kind of is too like, oh, let's be friends, man. And he kind of just goes awry with it, and it just gets away from him. And he's a great dude. He's just awkward and he's out of his element. He doesn't really know how to be cool. And that's me. You know what I mean? I don't know how to be cool. I have a group of people that think I'm cool. You guys that tune in, you think I'm cool. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I definitely don't have any male friends that think I'm cool. All right, so for Best Male Performance, of these 6 nominees, I'll throw them back up there for you. There you see them. 2 of them from Sinners, right? Which I think is probably I don't want to say guaranteed, but 95% guarantee to be an Oscars player at the end of the year. The winner mid-season right now, as we're sitting here, for the best male performance of the year, at least among these 6, is Michael B. Jordan for Sinners. That would be my winner. He plays Smoke and Stack, the twins, right? And visual effects are employed, doubles are probably employed, but Michael B. Jordan, especially when those 2 characters of Smoke and Stack are on screen together in the frame together, you forget, at least I did, I forgot that those were both Michael Jordan. The performances are so different. They're so 180 from each other, and they both have their characteristics, the walk, the facial expressions, the way they touch their face, just like little weird shit that Jordan would have had to be like, okay, I'm Stack right now. This is how I act now. And then the next scene, I'm Smoke. I'm doing this. I'm stoic, whatever. And the way that he was able to do that for the course of the film, I mean, obviously Coogler, great, commendation to him as well, but Michael B. Jordan, those double performances. We had another one show up here among these 6 with Robert Pattinson and Mickey 17. He actually had more than 2 because there were other iterations of Mickey throughout that film. But yeah, Michael B. Jordan, right now he's my number 6. He's just right outside of that 5. It's such a stout group. But I do think that if Sinners is in the upwards like 8, 9, 10 or more nominations, then Michael B. Jordan's going to come along with that. Next up, we will shift to the 6 nominees for the midseason for Best Director. Here we go. Emil Christine Blichfeldt for The Ugly Stepsister, Norwegian director. Ryan Coogler for Sinners, of course. Mike Flanagan, first mentioned, for The Life of Chuck. Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, 2 directors for Warfare. Joseph Kosinski for F1, the movie, first mentioned for that one as well. And Celine Song for Materialists. All right. These are all pretty well-known films. Either that or I've already talked about them, like The Ugly Stepsister. So in looking at these, there's not a lot of additional commentary I'll give. I haven't talked about F1, the movie yet, though, or Warfare. You know, Warfare has got 2 directors, and the reason Ray Mendoza is in that directing duo is because his kind of job in making this movie, he does film work. He's done film work in the past, but he's an ex-military guy, and this is based on what his troop went through during the Iraq War. And it was a mission that they were on that seems somewhat trivial, and I'm obviously not minimizing what they went through, but in the large scheme of the war, it's a very kind of snapshot event over the course of a day that doesn't speak to the larger deal with the Iraq War. But it's based on their memories. So Ray Mendoza was there. Some of the other guys, not all of them, but some of the other guys that were there, that lived through it, that lived to talk about it, also contributed their memories to the movie. And they kind of shot the movie like that, almost improvised based on the real life soldiers' memories and how they recollected what happened. And they collaborated to kind of get it as right as they could. It's also extremely harrowing. It's definitely the most harrowing movie I've seen so far this year. Very real, very in the trenches. You know, that gets overused as a term, but believe me, it is. You feel like, oh my God, I'm in battle with these guys. I'm dealing with the same trauma, at least from a observer, witness point of view. And Garland brought all the usual suspects in terms of his characteristics to filmmaking, which I am a sucker for, whether you're talking about Civil War, which was just the year before this, that was also a wartime film that I thought was shot and looked beautiful and got way fewer shout outs during award season than it should have. Ex Machina, Annihilation. I mean, I could go on and on. I love Alex Garland, even though 28 years later was a bit of a letdown for me this year. Personally, him as a filmmaker almost always hits with me. And then when it comes to F1, the movie, directed by Joseph Kosinski, who also directed Top Gun Maverick a couple years ago, which did end up receiving some Oscar nominations, I think F1 could be an Oscars player. It's going to get best sound, it's going to get best editing, and I'm talking about nominations. It's also probably going to get best score for Hans Zimmer. The score is a bit drowned out during the film, but if you just listen to the score or over the credits or whatever, it is some of Hans Zimmer's best shit. It really is. And that, of course, is a name that when the Academy members in the music branch see that, oh, Hans Zimmer did a score? Oh, great. That makes this easy, even if they haven't heard it. So not to take anything away from it, because if you have heard it, it is a beautiful, triumphant, energetic score from Hans Zimmer. So I think those 3 types of technical crafts and possibly visual effects too, although I think that field might be a little too heavy when we get later on in the year. But as it stands now, it's definitely one of the best VFX movies. But Joseph Kosinski is a great director who I wanted to put on here in my 6 because every time he does an action movie, I'm like, okay, he's great. It's not a one-off. It's not a fluke. You know what I mean? He did basically with F1 here. He basically did Top Gun Maverick all over again, just as thrilling, just as action-packed, just with enhanced technical stuff because we're 2 years, advanced in terms of what stuff technology can do. But the direction is still key. And it's brilliant. Instead of having jets, you've got Indy race cars, and actually various other types of racing cars as well. So I love Kosinski's style of directing an action movie. And I think that art form is somewhat lost in the shuffle when it comes to award season. You rarely see action directors or action movies and that director getting nominations or getting mentions, even on lower end critical groups. So I love Kosinski. I wonder if his day could be coming in terms of the Academy, but F1, the movie, was a great movie, first of all, great summertime film that I think could be an Oscars player, and Joseph Kosinski, it gives a great directorial effort there. Mike Flanagan, I haven't talked about The Life of Chuck yet. The movie was overall a disappointment for me, although it had some great elements to it, and the number one best element, in my opinion, was the direction. It was directed near flawless. I'm a Mike Flanagan fanboy from his horror stuff. I love all the TV stuff that he's done for Netflix in the horror realm, all his films, constantly kind of trying to challenge himself. And you can see that even though it's based on a Stephen King short story. So you would think it would be horror, but it's not. I mean, there's a couple scenes that have the horror DNA in there, but it's not a horror movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a story about coming to terms with your lot in life and how your life has ended up and the people you met along the way. I mean, that's what it is. It's a very melodramatic film about family and self-reflection and inward. What am I good for? What did I do in my life? And that kind of thing. And it is very poignant, but the movie itself and the storytelling structure annoyed me, and that's why I didn't like it. Now, I did a whole review of it. I'm not going to bash it on this video. I'll tag the review down below if you want to check it out. I was kind of middle of the road on it. I think I gave it a 6 out of 10, but the direction is top tier from Mike Flanagan here. And we've talked about Sinners a million times. Ryan Coogler getting nominated for Best Director here is no shock, but also I think he's going to be in the 5 for Best Director at the Academy Awards. He could actually be our winner next year. A lot of it's going to hinge on the success of the Academy and the awards bodies, whether you're talking about the Globes, the SAGs, whatever, of embracing Sinners. And obviously if you get to like the DGA and the PGA and Coogler's winning those, then look what Sean Baker did last year. So we won't really know in terms of a win, but I think it's like a 98-99% chance the dude's getting nominated for Best Director because, his films, this is not the first time he's shown up. The Black Panther films have gotten nominated in multiple categories as well. So he's well respected. Everybody that works for him loves him. I think he's on the way to showing up at the Oscars next season at a minimum as a nominee. And then Celine Song is my homegirl. I love her. Materialists is a movie that was also a little divisive. I think it's around a 60 on Rotten Tomatoes. Just a little more positive than down the middle, but I love her. I love her style of storytelling. And I love how she packages something, whether you're talking about Past Lives or Materialists, she packages it as what you think it is. And then when you get in, you sit down, the movie starts to play out in front of you. Not only are expectations being debunked, but you're being introduced to something that's wholly unique and basically brand new. This is a romantic comedy. Not really, but it's got the formula, the algorithm of a romantic comedy. It's packaged as that. There's some elements of that throughout. There's some funny moments for sure on the dating scene, whatever. But it's almost hard to even explain because Celine Song turns it and says, yeah, that's there, but here's this real thing that I went through because she was actually a matchmaker herself for a period of time, and this is based on some of her real experiences. This is life for those people, so it's not so much about the dating part, right? It's about the matchmaking part. But then the matchmaker becomes the dater, or ends up on the dating scene with the triangle between Pascal and Chris Evans. But then that's not what it appears to be either, because Chris Evans is basically an ex, and really, some people might argue Dakota Johnson's character's soulmate, depending on where you fall in that argument. All right, so there you go. I'll throw them back up on the screen for you. The 6 nominees for Best Director before we get to our final category of Best Movie. And the winner for the Best Director at the Midseason Awards halfway through the year is Ryan Coogler for Sinners. I already talked to you guys about it. I think he might actually end up winning the Oscar 6 months from now, or actually 9 months from now. Why are they doing the Oscar so late this year? Holy Lord. Good thing I do an award season channel, am I right? The last category that we're going to be doing is for Best Movie of the Year so far. These are not my top 10 movies of the year because there are some movies that I don't think are critically acclaimed or what would be considered award-friendly that I would probably rank higher than these, but these are movies that I personally enjoy, that I would recommend, that I also think are basically critically acclaimed among the masses. Let's look at the nominees. There are 10 in this category as we go through with the best of the year so far. The Assessment, The Ballad of Wallace Island, Black Bag, I haven't mentioned that one yet, from Steven Soderbergh, F1 the Movie, Friendship, Materialists, Sinners, of course, Thunderbolts, The Ugly Stepsister. I won't shut up about that one, guys, until you watch it. After everybody I know has seen it, I'll stop talking about it. And lastly, Warfare from Garland and Mendoza. So I've talked about basically all these with the exception of Black Bag, which is the Steven Soderbergh kind of spy romance thriller. Cate Blanchett, Michael Fassbender, Marissa Abella, a really, really good cast. The movie is almost like Aaron Sorkin wrote the screenplay because it is a very dialogue-heavy script, and it's a spy thriller with not a lot of thrills, but there's thrills in the dialogue, if that makes sense. A lot of great stuff in this film, and Steven Soderbergh's direction, he almost made my Best Director 6 also, is he just continues to do crazy shit that works every time. He also directed Presence this year, and that's a perfect example. He was the ghost in Presence. He was walking around, the actors were reacting to him. The freaking director, okay? And not a first-time director, Steven Soderbergh, is walking around the house pretending to be a ghost. and you have to react to them. That's just an example. But I love Black Bag. It was one of my favorites of the year. It wouldn't follow my top 10. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about. It's kind of in that Venn diagram of my favorites and critically some of the best reviewed films of the year. So that's the only one we haven't really talked about. Of the 10 that you see here on your screen, the best movie of the year at the halfway point, at least for my mid-season awards, you'll have to tune in next week for my top 5 of the year to see if it's the same thing. But I'm going to give the award to the best picture to Sinners from Ryan Coogler. I'm not going to tell you my favorite among these because I want you to tune into my video next week where I give my top 5 of the year and my top 5 worst so far of 2025. But it might not be Sinners. It could be, but it might not be. So that might be the boring pick, but I just think that it's objectively, really, I mean, there's a couple people I've heard that weren't as high on it as most are. But I think whenever you have a vampire film that's being directed by typically a genre filmmaker, usually in the superhero realm, frankly, even if you want to say sports movies with the Creed films, that ends up being so zeitgeisty, makes hundreds of millions at the box office, and then you have it being expected to be a player in multiple categories. I mean, not just picture, director, actor, supporting, the crafts like music, cinematography, possibly VFX, original song maybe, for Miles Catton. I mean, it's all over the place in terms of being a player in multiple facets of the award season. So I think that almost objectively it's probably the best movie of the year. Now, if it wasn't one of my favorites, I probably would not have given it the prize here, but it's also one of my favorites. It's easily in my top 5, probably top 3 of the year so far, at least. I'll be doing that video next week, like I said. Just in recapping, here's what ended up winning my mid-season awards, 4 of them really. Best Picture we just talked about went to Sinners. The Best Female Performance went to Leah Myron, a Norwegian actress who only has 2 acting credits. This was the second one for The Ugly Stepsister. And the rest went to Sinners as well. Michael B. Jordan winning Best Male Performance for Sinners. That's the lead role of Smoke and Stack, the twins. And then Best Director went to Ryan Coogler for Sinners. And like I said earlier in my commentary, if anybody on this screen of these winners is going to go on to be an actual winner at the Academy Awards, my money would be on Ryan Coogler for director, even if it doesn't win picture. Next week, you can expect 2 more mid-season videos that will be much different than this because it's going to be all me. Everything that I like, which I like some weird shit occasionally, so be ready. But I've been talking about it on this video. I'm going to do my top 5 and my bottom 5 movies of 2025 so far. Again, based on my personal opinion. You'll see that video next week. And I'm also going to do a live stream at some point. I don't know what night yet, but when I decide what night to do it, or my kids decide what night I can do it, then I will schedule it on YouTube so you can see and you can notify yourself with the bell or whatever the hell you want to do. It'll be around 10 p.m. I just have to figure out what night I'm going to do it. And what I'm going to do on that live stream is I'm going to rank in a tier list situation kind of setting every movie I've seen so far, every new release I've seen so far in 2025, and I'll give it a ranking on the tier. It'll be, right now I'm around 60 films I've seen so far this year, so that'll be a couple hours of a live stream, and you can ask me questions about the award season upcoming and movies and whatever you want to do. So if you like this content, make sure you subscribe. You could skip ahead if you'd like. There are timestamps below, but I want to remind everybody about channel memberships. You get all kinds of bonus material if you like hearing me talk about movies. You get all of the ranking videos, if you will, anything that's basically not time sensitive. You'll get that early as a member. You also get to use custom emotes as a channel member. They include my face with the beard. I like playing with it. It's really, really fucking weird, guys. You also get Timothée Chalamet, Mikey Madison holding her Oscar. That will forever be embedded in my mind, so why not make it an emoji? The mom from Parasite. You also get recently added Tom Cruise giggling like a fucking psychotic maniac, Toni Collette mothering very angrily, and of course, Queen Ariana Grande, who is going to be nominated for Wicked for Good. Yes, I said it. I'm not going to not say it until she's not nominated, but she will be, so don't worry. If you want to help me out, it's like $2. Just click join below, and you can join the rest of the garage executives out here and be forever in my debt and help me keep things going. I really appreciate you guys tuning into my mid-season awards. Please comment below. Please share the video. Let me know what you thought. What did I miss? What is your favorite male performance? What's your favorite female performance that I didn't mention? Same thing with movie and director. I love reading all those comments, and I actually try to respond to as many of them, if not all of them, as soon as I can. So let me know down below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time in the garage.